All right, welcome back to another episode of the Fast Lane with Greg Q. And I'm here with a super exciting guest today. I got Shane Wilson from Citta Capital out in California, and we are going to be chatting all the great stuff that we always do on this show, and get kind of Shane's perspective on founders and VC world and all of that. So thanks for joining us, Shane.
Heck yeah, Greg. Excited to do it. Let's do this.
Awesome. So tell me a little bit about yourself. How'd you get here? What'd you do in the business world and in education before you got a part of the venture capital world?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm with Citta Capital. I joined up with these guys in September of 2025. We're an early stage VC fund. We write our first checks in the Series C to A range. And typically, we're investing in B2B AI, deep tech, and robotics. I joined up with Citta Capital after business school. So I spent 2023 to 2025 at Yale School of Management, New Haven, Connecticut. So as I wrapped up my education, my wife said, "Hey, it's my turn. I want to get my MBA." And she got into Berkeley. So we jumped out to the West Coast. But before Yale, lifetime East Coaster, spent most of my life and career in New York. Really, I'd say, Greg, like my operational specialty is 0 to 1 go to market. I worked with startups and scale ups, usually with kind of ideas before they were products, and really became kind of this Swiss Army knife of selling product, marketing, and how do we kind of get things into customers' hands really quickly, such that we can iterate, build better, and capture more value. So I'd say I'm a commercially focused investor, and I really love to nerd out on the sales and marketing part of products.
Nice. So how long have you been with Citta?
It's been about 9, 10 months. So still relatively new. I'm the new guy on the team.
Nice. And so far, what's been the favorite company you've worked with, if you're allowed to talk about them?
Yeah, absolutely. So a company near and dear to my heart, it was the first investment I led with Citta, is called Visto. They're in GEO. So if search engine optimization, SEO, whether we call this GEO, I think it's like generative engine optimization. I personally like AIEEO. Sounds like it, Old McDonald. But anyway, these guys are helping companies show up better in AI search results. So if you imagine you're a brand and you're asking, hey, I am looking to buy something, it's going to help that brand populate in your AI results. What I really love about this company, one, just awesome founders. They're like a little bit more mature. They take great feedback. They listen really well. And it's like when I sit down with Tom and Harry, like I just really have fun chatting with these guys. Two, as I mentioned, I'm kind of this like business development nerd, marketing nerd. They have a really cool motion to getting their product out in the market. They're selling to agencies, and in selling to agencies, each agency they bring on, they're then interacting with anywhere from like 3 to 30 new brands. So whereas most of the other GEO companies are going direct to brand, this kind of strategy with some embedded network effects is dramatically scaling Visto and putting their product in more people's hands. And this was just kind of abundantly clear in their early results. We're looking at some like incredible month-over-month growth rates. So Visto, it's I guess I should say you shouldn't pick favorites, but I like those guys a lot.
Yeah, that sounds super rad, and you talk about those network effects, right? And going after agencies, I'm on the same track, right? With Make Sense and Instadat, the companies that I've been working on. It's really about incentivizing kind of up the tree, up the ladder of our actual customer, right? And making it so that, these orgs that already have, for example, in Colorado, I had CHASA, and they had 372 schools. I could never reach 372 schools, outwardly, but those connections are really, really important, right? And clearly you can see that benefit in action.
Yeah, absolutely. I think like the business developer that kind of thinks about the market structure can move much, much faster. Like gone are the days like when I started started my career in like 2014, like you could load up a mail merge, email 150 people and have good results. And that's just like not part of the toolkit anymore. you really need to be thinking about how you can parlay one relationship into the next, into the next. And so one place I've seen kind of like this similar, like tap into the network, when it comes to products that are selling into like home services. So HVAC is a place where there's been a ton of private equity activity rolling up individual mom and pop shops. Well, now we're saying, how do we bring AI to HVAC? If you can speak to and interact with, that private equity investor level or private equity operator level, you've got some of those embedded network effects, and your product can move a lot faster. So yeah, wherever there's kind of those structures and markets, when a founder says, "Hey, we figured out how to kind of layer up and kind of scale faster," I get pretty excited and I want to learn more.
Yeah, definitely. And so a lot of our viewers are founders, early stage, and their most difficult proposition is getting in front of VCs, and the second difficult proposition is, how do I actually interact with them? Do you have any recommendations on how? And I'm not trying to push a bunch of calls on you, but just in general, how would you kind of tell founders to structure their fundraising efforts?
Yeah, great question. So, getting in front of people, I think like this is just a point where you need to just take a moment to kind of quiet your ego and recognize that, right now, let's say you have no meetings with VCs. If you find 15 VCs on LinkedIn and you send them messages and none of them get back to you, you've lost maybe 5 minutes and you still have 0 meetings with VCs. So you're exactly where you were before. So don't be afraid to reach out. That's step one. Just start reaching out. Most people aren't going to respond. Some people might flat out say no, but a couple might say yes. And that's worthwhile. That's worthwhile. There are definitely better ways you can get in front of people. Like, again, thinking about that network. Can you get on stage at your local pitch? Like maybe there's like a meetup where you can go and be part of a pitch event. These are great ways for you to really kind of refine your pitch, maybe meet some people and kind of broaden your net a little bit. But when it comes to like just getting yourself out there, the best advice I have, Greg, is just do it. Try something. If it works, lean into it. If it doesn't, try something new. Now, interacting and structure, and maybe this kind of dovetails a little bit into that last point around targeting. The truth is like, as VCs, we get a ton of things. And our first job is to filter. So we're looking for reasons to disqualify. One of the easiest things to disqualify for is like, we don't invest in what you do. So for example, let me think of one that's like, we're generalists, so we're not the right people to kind of actually use for this example. But let's say I am a med tech investor. I invest in drug development. I invest in data having to do with healthcare. If you come at me with a defense tech startup, it's the easiest no I've got today. Do a little bit of that screening, do a little bit of that research, whether that requires like a Crunchbase login or a PitchBook login to see, what are the sectors that VCs invest in. The other big thing to pay attention to are, what are the stages? Like, hey, we're going to go after, if we're going to go after Excel partners, maybe, well, you have no revenue. I'm pretty sure Excel really is only going to take a bite out of kind of later growth stage companies. So if you can go on a website and they say, we're growth stage investors, Series C and beyond, don't approach them with the pre-revenue startup. They're going to reject you as well. So really just kind of have that honest heart to heart around your stage and kind of who is kind of in your food chain, like who is eating at that table. And then, however much better you can be to kind of get closer to what those investors care about from a sector and product standpoint, it's going to dramatically improve your odds. And, one thing that I would just kind of get across to the founder is like, I get having any meeting is better than no meetings. But if you load up junk meetings that aren't going to work, you're wasting your time. Like a 30-minute call that isn't going anywhere is a huge waste of your time as a founder, and it's a waste of our time as a VC. So the filtering and just kind of being realistic about where you are and what can work, really, really critical. And oftentimes that's a lot of kind of where things get dismissed out of hand. One other thing I will say, if you're going to reach out, have your deck ready. I don't accept a call from a LinkedIn cold message. So like, please send me a LinkedIn. hey, Greg, thanks for reaching out. Do you have a deck? It's going to be the first thing that I ask, because I don't want to waste 30 minutes if it's not good for you, not good for me. So do your homework first, know what that VC invests in terms of stage and sector. Make sure you have something that I can look at really quickly. I think honestly, in both, it's in both parties' interests. If it's a no, get to a no pretty quickly, and just take that as a no and move on to the next. So not my most cogent points there, but that's how I would kind of speak to those founders, to just kind of touch on the outreach strategy and then really structuring that information once they do get in touch.
Yeah, that makes total sense. And there's countless VCs out there, and there's even more founders. And it's a numbers game, right?
It's a numbers game. It's also a relationship game. So I would add to that caveat in, and I think that's pretty important, because any VC no is really like a no for now. And how you carry yourself on both sides of the table. And really, this should probably be a message more for the VCs. Like, be upfront, be honest, be clear, be tight with your timelines. It may be a no at the seed stage, but when you get to Series A, you could be exactly in our strike zone. So really just kind of think about, hey, I don't want, I'm trying to open a door here, but my tactics to open the door shouldn't close the door for the future. And that goes on both sides.
Yeah, makes total sense. And here on the Fast Lane, we talk about iteration, communication, moving fast, right? And building stuff with intention now. And kind of one of the things that I've always stood by, in life in general, is let's communicate quickly, right? Let's view what we're trying to get to. Let's make decisions and let's build it. Let's just go ahead and build it. And you've met a lot of founders, successful and unsuccessful. How do you think that mindset fits into the entrepreneur's journey?
Yeah, I think that moving fast, failing fast, iterating fast is the kind of way of startups. And the truth is post AI, it's even faster. And so it can be kind of exhausting how like your company could change in a matter of hours, but the nature of competition is if you can move that fast, if you don't want to move that fast, somebody will, and they will probably beat you. So speed is quite critical. I think what's important is like how you move through that speed and understanding when it's time to kind of think fast and think slow. So if you haven't read the book, the Amos Tversky, Daniel Kahneman, Thinking Fast and Slow, System 1, System 2 thinking, I think that you can adapt a version of this to your own kind of iteration loop here. So fast thinking, I'm sure we're going to talk more about this because that's what this podcast is about. When I'm talking about slow thinking, how can we be analytical to kind of set up proper experiments around our hypotheses? So look, we think this is our target ICP. We're going to launch 150 contacts into the campaign to see if it works. What does good look like? That should be determined before the results start coming in, such that you have a very clean decision to say, keep going or don't keep going. So how you move fast, it's not all fast all the time. There are some times when you do have to just kind of use your kind of second order thinking and do some of the big brain stuff. And I think that's the right thing to do before the bullets start flying in the air. As best you can, take some time, be clean, be analytical. The other part of the iteration loop that's maybe a reason to just slightly tamp down speed for speed's sake is like there are some places you can go and learn some things, and it's a little bit faster if you take your foot off the gas for 20 to 30 minutes and go look for some priors that might be helpful. I just got out of my MBA, and I think that there's a lot that you can derive from some of like the strategy thinkers. This is like Michael Porter and his 5 forces. There's like the 7 powers out there. Adopting some of these frameworks can help with that kind of iterative analytical feedback loop I mentioned earlier. It can also help you identify where there might be some soft spots in the market. For example, like how Visto was going after agencies versus brands. If you think your product is really similar to another product that launched in the past, well, go see if you can read any of the blog posts about how they did it. 1st Round Capital is a great series about finding product market fit. Go, take 20 minutes, read a blog of a company or a founder that's similar to you, and chances are your experiments are going to get a lot tighter. So yes, speed is the ultimate goal, but how you kind of apply that speed, and if you choose kind of where and when to be smart, your company will go faster, even though in the exact moment it may feel a little bit slower. So maybe like how I wrap this up is like, what is it? Slow and smooth, and smooth. Slow is smooth, and smooth is fast. That might be the right speed that I'm trying to get at, Greg.
Yeah, and as someone who's been racing cars and go-karts since I was 6, that is true, right? You can't fly into a corner with a decreasing radius exit and expect to move faster on the other side, right? It's how what's our right speed getting into the corner so that our exit speed is the greatest, so that my straightaway speed is the greatest, and that's kind of the racing side of that, right?
Yeah, I love it. I mean, I think sports are some of the best places to find some of these good analogies and kind of thought frameworks. And like, yeah, the other part is you were just kind of talking about that is like, hey, if you, spot that there's something wrong with your motor, don't keep going around the track, pull it into the garage, do a little bit of thinking, fix that, then get back out on the track. Like I think a lot of the kind of failure mode for first time founders is they just keep pushing and redlining for so long that after a while the car can't run, whether it's they're physically burning out or the team around them is. So yeah, there's a lot that could be mined in the racing analogy for sure.
Yeah, and another analogy that I've stolen from the startup world. I talk about this in my Next Level CEO episode that's coming out next month, and it's Jeff Bezos, his concept of one-way doors versus two-way doors, right? We've got these one-way doors where we have decisions to make, right? And we can walk through those doors, and if it doesn't work, we can walk back, right? The door is still open. These are the smaller decisions that I really try to hone in on making them fast and iterating fast with that. But you have the two-way doors, right? Where if you walk through this door, right, it locks behind you. And to get back through that door, maybe it's a general product direction or, a huge interface update you make, right? Getting back through that door requires a lot more work and time. And those are the ones you really want to slow down and think about, right? And analyze all your options. And, that's something that I've, tried to implement, in my life as well.
Not every decision can get the same amount of brain power. We have to recognize that our thought, doesn't matter how much mental horsepower you're working with, is a finite resource. And so when if you are kind of able to cleanly categorize between locking doors and unlocking doors, be smart. Like don't try to rip through all the locking door decisions in one day. That may be the stuff to really sit on and chew with. But if the door swings both ways, like that's a good place to just kind of work quickly and see what happens. But yeah, I mean, like I fundamentally think like it's a question of like you have finite resources, period. Your mental capacity and your brain power fits in that resource framework. Be smart about how you're applying it. And if it is a locking door, take your time there.
Yeah, absolutely. And also on this kind of concept of, moving quickly and making decisions, right? We come to communication, right?
Mm.
And I learned this, in the education system, right? And I just adopted a strategy of, I like to communicate with students. I like to communicate with my employees and my customers quickly, right? I don't need to come up with the first, I don't need to come up with the best perfect answer every single message I send. And my example from education, is a kid emails me, says, "Hey, Mr. Keel, I've got a question. And, what do you think about this?" And I taught entrepreneurship. So this is kind of the space I was in. What do you think about this? Right. And my philosophy was, well, let me give you an answer right now. Right. But contrast that to their other teachers, right? Where their other teachers take 2 days to get back to them. Right. And this kid has, been thinking on this problem and doesn't have any feedback for 2 days, when the amount of time it actually takes the teacher to respond to this, right, is very minimal, right? It doesn't take a ton of my brain power to say, hey, look, like, I think your target market is off here, right? I think, you really need to dig into who your customer is, right? And really think about that, right? And in my world, right, I can do that in 20 seconds, and then a kid has 2 more days to think on it. Whereas, the education system, and that's one of the businesses I'm in, is education. They take so long to communicate things back and forth that, you know, the whole speed to action, feedback loop, it's miserable. And, that's something that is really important to me. My employees know that. What are your thoughts on kind of that communication travel idea?
Yeah, well, when you're talking about education and communication, I'm going back to my most recent one, sitting in an MBA classroom where everyone's favorite answer is "it depends" because they're trying to buy time to see how the room's going to react. Like this kind of like BCG McKinsey answer is what everybody gives, and then like actually, I'm trying to like break out of it. I've noticed I've been so kind of cautious to like stand in a position. I think that's just part of the MBA education. It makes you do that a little bit. Um, and with that framing, I'm going to give you a qualified answer. So there are some spaces where if you are in a leadership position and you shoot from the hip too quickly and it's wrong, your team can go in the wrong direction. They can start feeling some strategic whiplash. And in those situations, if you're not sure, if you haven't evaluated, is it a two-way door or a one-way door? If this could be, kind of consequential in terms of how people even plan out the next 6 to 12 hours of their workday, sometimes you got to pocket that a little bit and think through how those things are going to work out. And sometimes the best answer is no answer at all. So really, like in a one-to-one, I think that, yeah, sure, it's good to optimize around giving a good, clear I think or I feel. When you're in a leadership position, that could kind of have a longer tail and take a while to disseminate through an organization. Consistency is pretty important. And I've seen this come through with a lot of CEOs I've spent time with over the last couple of years, that they listen incredibly well. They're very present. Maybe what they will do in a I want a response. Someone who asks you something wants a response. They will kind of empathize, understand the problem a little bit, and then those are sometimes inappropriate. I'll get back to you. If you're the CEO of American Airlines, you might have to get back to someone before you think about, how is this going to be impacted, and kind of dealt with by the unions, with customers, et cetera. So the role really depends here. But if you're an educator, like just getting back to the example at hand, like you're competing with GPT, which gives you an answer in a couple spins. And so that's just a change in communication. And if your job is to help a student and that student is, working at the speed of a student who might be really focused and really doing things quickly, if you don't give them that answer in 48 hours, they could have spent the last, gotten 500 answers from an AI that could have been good or could have been bad. So yeah, I'm waffling here. I'm on the fence with you on this one, Greg, but I've seen some pretty good use cases and instances where pocketing the response and being careful are important. So I can't give you an unqualified 100%. Let's go really fast on answers. I've seen some people who really should take it slow.
Yeah, and that's totally true. And I've had to learn that kind of outside of education. I get an email, and my first temptation is to just spit one back, right? And when you've got people working for you, and you've got all these different moving parts that are interconnected in these spaces, it does take some time, right, to really qualify the type of response, right, and the level and the detail and the direction, and also think about their role and impact to that response, right?
Yep. Second order effects. I will say though, I do type things faster, and I like having a couple more typos in my emails now because it looks like I actually wrote it. So I'll do it all out front.
Right. Cool. So you've met a lot of founders. You've probably worked on your own projects. What are kind of some characteristics you see in these successful folk that,
Ooh.
you don't see in the corporate world?
Yeah. So successful. We could ask about 15 more questions on what successful is. And I'd also say VC is it's an almost open feedback loop in terms of how long we have to be proven right or wrong. So I think rather than going down the pure play successful and trying to kind of answer for many different archetypes, I can tell you what I like, and what kind of moves me to invest in people. Um, I love great storytellers. Storytelling is essential, and this is something for especially your technical co-founders and founders is important to double click on. It's not just about like a slick, smooth deck. It's not a branding or a marketing thing. It's a proxy for leadership. Because if you can tell me cleanly, succinctly, problems, solutions, results that you're building for, that's going to help you sell better. It's going to give me a clearer idea of what I'm investing in, but I can also extrapolate to say this is how you're going to communicate with the people on your team and be able to move people towards a vision. So people who take the time to really practice the craft of storytelling, their pitch has kind of rising action, a beginning, a middle, and end. They land on the punchline. You get a lot of points with me for that. And I think it's an important life skill that you can't offboard to AI right now. Next up is intellectual honesty. And this is something where, yeah, Greg, I look at 20 to 40 startups a week. I've probably seen agentic for this many times. It's my job to see it more than founders. I might ask something and you don't have a good answer for it. I don't know much better than, oh, no, that's not a problem. Or no, you don't understand. Like, I'm an early stage investor. Every one of these companies has problems, right? Like, I don't get to look at Amazon or Nvidia on a day-to-day basis. I'm looking for someone I can partner with. So oftentimes if I'm challenging or kind of saying like, hey, we see the market this way, that's a great invitation for them to ask a question. Well, maybe we could go deeper, or maybe they could walk away learning something. That exchange is really, we're kind of modeling what it's going to be like if I'm sitting on your board one day. Let's see, intellectual honesty, storytelling, really big. Yeah, I think those are maybe like the X factor ones that I'm looking for. Obviously, there's things like, have you run a company before? Have you raised funds before? Did you get a good pedigree other than in your education or where you work for? Everybody kind of controls for them, but like, I think the storytelling and the intellectual honesty is what separates folks, and it's like really where I kind of start to lean in when people have those things right. So yeah, I'll stick a pin in it there and say those two are ones that I think every founder can develop, and they will become dramatically more effective as leaders, as fundraisers, you name it.
Yeah, totally agree. And I talk to a lot of founders throughout the day, and I kind of look at the same stuff, right? Typically my question is, well, tell me a story of your customer and what a day in their life is like now versus when they use your product, right? And I can really see the difference between, the concrete logical thinkers who come up with a bunch of reasons and strategies and facts, right? And those who really understand the archetype, right? Who really understand the persona, and are relating to that side of things, right?
Greg, dude, I love that you said that customer, 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 customer. Tell me about your customers. Who are you designing for? So many bad storytelling experiences and pitches are because people haven't drilled down on that. If you know who that person is, you know what their problems are, the whole downstream pitch gets easier and the company gets built around those problems. So yeah, who's your customer? Know who that is. If you don't know who that is, that's who you should be spending your time trying to get in touch with before you try and get in touch with me.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that is pretty much all I got for today. I would try to keep these at 30 minutes, and I think we had a pretty amazing conversation. The last thing I'd touch on, for all the founders out there, Work on your craft, learn your customer, understand how they're feeling and what their pain is, and really kind of dig into, you know, are you a painkiller, right? Or are you just an allergy medicine, right? Are you just a vitamin, right? And you got to really dig into those dynamics if you really want to create something insanely great.
Yep. Customers, storytelling. And listen, when it comes to that craft, like, we were talking a little bit earlier, how do you land better? How do you kind of get your information? Study some of the greats. There are plenty of pitches on YouTube. And if you've never pitched before, like watch, I think it was Mike Siebel used to be with Y Combinator. I love, he's got a YouTube series that talks to you about like, what are the scenes and the slides in your pitch deck? Do that. Like just follow that structure, get there. And you're like 80% better than your competitors. So like, yeah, work on your craft. Like you're a founder now. That's great. You don't have a boss telling you what to do, but there are plenty of people, who've walked this path before you, and follow in their footsteps. You will get to a better destination learning from someone else than just trying to figure it out all on your own. So I love that. Practice your craft.
Awesome. Well, thanks for coming and joining us today, Shane. It was a super awesome conversation, and yeah, look forward to seeing where Citta Capital goes, and who knows, maybe you're the next Peter Thiel.
All right, I hope, man. Greg, really appreciate being here, and your episode you mentioned. When is that going live?
Say that again.
You've got the episode coming up with was it Damon John? You were telling me about. What is that?
Yeah. What is it, or when is it going live?
When is it going live? I want to watch it.
So I just got the first draft of the final product. So probably like June, July. I have a week to kind of make some edits. But I'll send you the rough draft, and you can be on the inside.
Good. Awesome, man. Thanks so much for having me today, Greg.
All right. Thank you so much.